Just like we have additive tools like the brush tool or the clone stamp tool, we have subtractive tools, which is the eraser. So what do I mean by that? Additive tools, we're adding, paint or color to the image. Subtractive tools, we're taking it away. So just like an eraser in real life, we have the eraser in Photoshop, and it's this somewhat eraser-ish looking icon here. Changes pixels to the background color or makes them transparent. So I've got this single layer in my image that I'm going to double click on to make it not the background layer anymore. So now I can edit it. And the eraser tool does probably just what you'd expect. It erases the image. Since I only have one layer here, what it's showing me now is that this is transparent. If I bring up, let's say, a solid color fill layer, move that behind the image, you can see now that we can see through that layer and what's behind it shows through because it's now transparent. So we've actually deleted the pixels from this photograph on this layer. I'm going to back up by undoing. And we've got a couple more versions of the eraser tool that are slightly more sophisticated. So this is the background eraser tool. And what it does is it tries to identify the background and only erase that. So by clicking over here, I'm telling it that the background is the lake and I want it to be removed. It does a somewhat decent job of targeting the background and might be a good tool if you just need to quickly comp something together and get really quick results. It's a little clunky to use, but just know it's there. One step better, I think, is the Magic Eraser tool. This is really similar to some of the selection tools that we looked at before, like the Magic Wand, except in this case, it doesn't create a selection. It just totally deletes the pixels based on the colors that it finds where you click, how dark things are, how light things are. And it's destructive in the way that it's removing these pixels. They are getting deleted from the layer forever. But it could be a good tool to achieve some creative effects. Maybe if you're working in a lot of layers of different photographic elements, you could just move through and delete stuff like this and get some cool results that you might be able to turn into, let's say, like more of a creative composite. So I can see things in here that start to look cool. It's important to remember that the eraser tools are destructive tools. So if you're working on a pixel layer, it's going to be deleting pixels from your photograph. Generally, we want to work in a non-destructive fashion, so we're not losing anything permanently. But, occasionally you might want to break the rules, work really fast because you're trying to get creative results. That's fine. Just make sure your images are backed up on your hard drive. But if you make decisions that you didn't like and you do want to step back and you're using destructive tools, you can do that. So this icon right here brings up the history palette. What this does is it tracks all of the moves that you make. So every time I click in the image, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. I'm going to go back to my layer and I'm going to use the eraser tool. So watch at the bottom of the palette. I just erased something and it tracked it. It said you just did the eraser tool. If I click above it, it's going to take me back to the stage before I use the eraser. And I can keep going back like that. And you can also skip multiple steps at once to step back further, all the way to when you opened the image. Now, you can change the number of steps that history records. And I'm going to show you that real quick because this is an important setting. I'm going to go into my performance settings in Photoshop. You see, I've opened the Photoshop CC menu, preferences, go down to performance. There are like a million settings in the Photoshop preferences dialog. This is the only one I want to show you right now because this is how you can change your history states. You can scroll up so that you have up to 1,000. Now keep in mind, if you set that at 1,000, it's going to balloon your file size because what it's doing is taking a snapshot of every single move you make, and in this case that would be 1,000 moves, so 1,000 snapshots of your image, and it's going to have to store all that on your hard drive. I generally like to keep mine around 100, and I have a lot of memory and I have a lot of hard drive space, so set it at 100 if you want to have more history states and see how the performance of your computer holds up as you're doing it, and you can always set it back at any time. So now it's going to have 100 steps in here if I'm working on my image for a long time and doing a lot of stuff. And I can always move forward again if I backed up. So see, I can move backwards and forward in my history states. This is a great insurance policy if you're working quickly, destructively, and you want to back up or see the before and after of your image. You can go all the way back to the beginning and see where you got to. So additionally, a really cool feature in Photoshop, if you're working in this way, is the History Brush tool. So it restores parts of an image to an earlier state, and they should have put on the end with a brush. Notice this looks just like the paintbrush. It's got a size, it's got opacity up here, it's got flow. And what I can do is paint in my image to bring back the original base image with no erasers performed on it. So this is taking me all the way back to this state in my history palette, because you see this little icon here? It's the same icon as the history brush. And if you mouse over it and hover, the tooltip says sets the source for the history brush. So this is set back to the beginning state of my photograph. Say I found a spot along the way that I liked. I can click here and set the source of my history brush to this step. And look, this can get confusing. It's still tracking my history brush in my history palette, but also returning my image back to this state. So this is going to take some time to get comfortable with all these variables. I just want you to know these tools exist and what they do. So notice when I paint over here, since I've chosen to only take me back to this state right here, all of this work that I've done on the image is preserved. So that's why it's not bringing back these deleted areas. But everything I did after these erased areas is being returned. So the history brush kind of brings a little bit of creativity into your undos, basically. It's painting back your undo states.